One of the things I really love to talk about on my channel is books, and I love to relate my favorite books to food, so any recipes that are in the books or even just food inspired by the books. Today is such a treat for me because I get to talk about my all-time very favorite fiction book, which is the Anne of Green Gables series. So there are 8 books in this series, and well, there's going to be spoilers in this video. So if you're hoping to read the series, I would say maybe hold off on watching this video. But here we go. So Anne Shirley, who later becomes Anne Blythe when she gets married, is the main character, and she is my favorite fictional character, my favorite person from a book, and she is just the most delightful, wise, joyful, just interesting and fun person. And the first book starts with her being adopted by a brother and a sister, Marilla and Matthew, and she's 11 in the first book. By the time you get to the 8th book, Anne has had several children. In the 8th book, her children are her youngest is becoming a young woman, and so you can see how the book series goes from Anne being a child to growing up. She became a teacher, she became a principal of a school, she got married, she had children, she loves being a mother, and just the last book is not even focused on Anne anymore. It's focused on her youngest daughter and her story, and it's just, all of the books are lovely. If I had to rank them in order, I would say my all-time favorite book, very hard to choose. Of course, the first one. I always think the first of a series is usually the best. But my second favorite, I would say, is Rainbow Valley. And I think my opinion does tend to change over time. I've read this series at least 3 times all the way through. Rainbow Valley is when her children are more like grade school level, and it's more about their adventures, but Anne's still in the picture. So it's just really fun. So if you do start this series, make your way through a couple of the books before you decide. Really give it a fair chance is what I'm saying. And then, because I was missing Anne after reading through the books, I did find they have a graphic novel now. So the Anne of Green Gables series, the original, is written by L.M. Montgomery, Lucy Maud Montgomery. So the first book was published in 1908, and as the author went along, some of Anne's children served in World War I, so you can see how the books really span over a lifetime for the author as well. And then the graphic novel, which stays very true to the first book, but doesn't make it all the way through to the end of the first book, and also obviously they can't have every detail in there, but the details they do have in the graphic novel are very accurate and true to the original book. This was published in 2017, and it was adapted by Mariah Marsden and illustrated by Brenna Thumler. So they did a really good job. The illustrations are really fun to look at, especially, Anne loves being in nature, and I really love how they portrayed some of the beautiful scenes from nature. So Anne and the author of Anne of Green Gables both lived in Canada, so Prince Edward Island to be specific, and the name of where she lives is fictional. It is based on the real Prince Edward Island area, and so you can actually go visit that area of Canada, and they do have a house that looks just like house that Anne lives in when she gets adopted, and so you can visit there. There's a whole little area devoted just to Anne. Someday I would like to make it there. Now, I am going to link all of these books in the description box below if you're interested in purchasing them. You can buy the whole series. You can also buy the books individually. you can also check them out from your library, but I will link those below, and then including the graphic novel. And then I also found 2 cookbooks. These are actually written by the same author, but one is more updated than the other in terms of illustrations. I actually really like the older version more. Just shows some of the lovely details of what life may have looked like back then in the early 1900s. So the author who wrote these cookbooks is Kate Macdonald, and she is actually the granddaughter of L.M. Montgomery. So she's related to the author that wrote Anne of Green Gables. He did write a recipe book that is based on a lot of the foods that are featured in Anne of Green Gables. So what I want to do today is recreate some of these recipes, and then I will read just a short passage that goes along with each recipe. And hopefully you'll get a small taste of just how wonderful these books are. I hope it spurs you to read the books, and then also to just, if you're interested, experiencing some of the foods from the culture of the whole Anne series, you know, what people would eat, children, families, how they would cook and eat meals together as families in the 1900s. This is based on Chapter 3, Rainbow Valley. Anne's children are playing outside. They have beautiful land. The kids run around. They play outside. That is their main form of entertainment. Jem, who is the oldest son of Anne, he decides that he's going to cook up some fish that he just caught while fishing in the pond or the stream nearby. So he catches trout, and now he's going to cook it over a campfire. Based on that part of Rainbow Valley, I am going to cook trout over an open fire. I'm going to try and recreate that scene just a little bit, and I'm also going to make some homemade bread to go along with it, because they did eat the trout with bread. Now their bread was stale. I'm going to make fresh bread, and I'm going to add some seasonings to the fish, and also have some butter spread for our bread so we can fully enjoy it. Since I'll be working with a lot of flour today, I'm going to wear this beautiful apron that my mom made me. Thanks, Mom. Alright, so I'm going to get going on this bread, and I'm just making a French bread to go along with our trout later. And it's funny because in the Anne books there's a lot of delicious food mentioned. You don't hear a lot of mention of veggies. I'm sure they ate a lot of vegetables, but the author just didn't seem to highlight those in the book very much. So I'll add a vegetable to our meal as well, and it will be a really delicious, complete, satisfying meal. Right, so I have some water here. This is warm. I'm going to make a yeast bread, so I want the yeast to be able to activate. So I'm putting, and then now I'm going to add our sugar and yeast. I'm going to let that sit for about 5 minutes until I see the yeast get active. The yeast is looking really foamy, so I'm going to go ahead and add the oil, salt, and flour now. I'm going to add 2½ cups of flour and then see how the dough looks. If it needs more, I might need to add up to ½ cup more. My dough is looking ready now, so I'm going to go ahead and let it rise. I do need to add a little bit of oil to the bottom of the bowl and cover it with a towel. I'm going to let it rise for at least an hour. My dough has risen for an hour and it's getting nice, big, and puffy. There's going to be a second rise as well. So first I need to shape it. So I'm going to shape it into a rectangle and roll it up. Okay, and with the ends here, just going to seal these closed. This is going to be more like a French loaf. And then I'm also going to take my knife and put some slits across the top. I will cover this and it's going to rise for 1 more hour before baking. You can see that my dough has risen real nice, and so it is ready to go in the oven, and it's going to be a beautiful loaf of bread. Okay, moving right along, my bread came out of the oven and it's looking really good. It's going to be perfect for our little meal, our Anne of Green Gables feast. I have whole fish I bought. This is trout, and I'm going to go ahead and dry it off a little bit, season it, and I'm actually going to cook it on the grill. I was planning on cooking it over an open fire in our fire pit to make it as similar to Anne's children's experience as I could. However, I realized the cast iron skillet I was going to put over the fire pit is not actually long enough to reach both ends, so I wouldn't have been able to do it safely. So I'm just going to cook it on my grill, which is going to be just as delicious. Now, in the book, they only had salt to season their fish. It was freshly caught fish, so I'm sure it tasted amazing just as it was. I've actually never cooked whole fish before, but I do think this will be a good learning experience for me. I want to encourage you to do the same. If there's something you've never cooked before, doesn't mean you won't be able to do it. Go ahead and try it out. So first I'm going to season this with my kosher salt, pepper, and also some dried dill, and then I'll put my lemon wedges inside. And then I'm going to go ahead and put this on the grill. So I'm going to read you this section here. It's on page 18 and 19. "Won't you soon have those fish ready, Jem?" said Nan, sniffing with her dainty nose. "The smell makes me awfully hungry." "They're nearly ready," said Jem, giving one a dexterous turn. "Get out the bread and the plates, girls." Nan had produced the banquet board, a board literally as well as figuratively, from which many a feast, seasoned as no viands were elsewhere, had been eaten in Rainbow Valley. So Rainbow Valley is what they call the outdoor area that they love to play in most. It was converted into a table by propping it on 2 large mossy stones. Newspapers served as tablecloth, and broken plates and handleless cups from Susan's discard furnished the dishes. From a tin box secreted at the root of a spruce tree, Nan brought forth bread and salt. The brook gave Adam's ale of unsurpassed crystal. For the rest, there was a certain sauce, compounded of fresh air and appetite of youth, which gave to everything a divine flavor. To sit in Rainbow Valley, steeped in a twilight, half gold, half amethyst, rife with the odors of balsam fir and woodsy growing things in their springtime prime, with the pale stars of wild strawberry blossoms all around you, and with the sough of the wind and tinkle of bells in the shaking treetops, and eat fried trout and dry bread was something which the mighty of earth might have envied them. I'm also going to make a cake. So I'm going to make a special cake based on a fun mishap that Anne had in the first book. So Anne would not call it fun, but I think looking back on it when she got older, she could smile about it. For the cake, I'm going to mix the dry ingredients first. I have flour, baking powder, a pinch of salt. I'm going to get going on that. Anne is allowed to invite Mr. and Mrs. Allen up to the home she's staying in with Marilla, and she's going to make a special cake for the occasion. Anne is baking the cake herself. She's really excited. She really looks up to Mrs. Allen, who is her Sunday school teacher. Now, while she's baking it, Marilla goes out, and Anne is trying to flavor the cake with vanilla extract. Now, Anne is getting over a cold. She can't smell very good. On page 174, I'll start there. It says, all went merry as a marriage bell until Anne's layer cake was passed. Mrs. Allen, having already been helped to a bewildering variety, declined it, but Marilla, seeing the disappointment on Anne's face, said smilingly, "Oh, you must take a piece of this, Mrs. Allen. Anne made it on purpose for you." "In that case, I must sample it," laughed Mrs. Allen, helping herself to a plump triangle, as did also the minister and Marilla. Mrs. Allen took a mouthful of hers, and a most peculiar expression crossed her face. Not a word did she say, however, but steadily ate away at it. Marilla saw the expression and hastened to taste the cake. "Anne Shirley!" she exclaimed. "What on earth did you put into that cake?" "Nothing but what the recipe said, Marilla," cried Anne with a look of anguish. "Oh, isn't it all right?" "All right? It's simply horrible. Mrs. Allen, don't try to eat it. Anne, taste it yourself. What flavoring did you use?" "Vanilla," said Anne, her face scarlet with mortification after tasting the cake. "Only vanilla? Oh, Marilla, it must have been the baking powder. I had my suspicions of that. Baking powder? Fiddlesticks! Go and bring me the bottle of vanilla you used." Anne fled to the pantry and returned with a small bottle partially filled with a brown liquid and labeled yellowly, "Best Vanilla." Marilla took it, uncorked it, smelled it. "Mercy on us, Anne, you flavored that cake with anodyne liniment. I broke the liniment bottle last week and poured what was left into an old empty vanilla bottle. I suppose it's partly my fault. I should have warned you, but for pity's sake, why couldn't you have smelled it?" Anne dissolved into tears under this double disgrace. "I couldn't, I had such a cold," and with this she fairly fled to the gable chamber, where she cast herself on the bed and wept as one who refuses to be comforted. So liniment, anodyne liniment, was a medication that they would use back in the day, and Anne couldn't smell it. I guess it was a very strong smelling ointment, which is one of the more well-known stories from the first Anne book. I'm going to fold in some rainbow sprinkles. This is not in the recipe by Kate Macdonald, but I know I'll enjoy it and so will my children. This will bake in the oven at 350 degrees for 20 to 25 minutes. I think we need a couple more sprinkles. And these sprinkles are naturally colored. I'll link them in the box below in case you're interested in trying them out. I'm going to put these in my cake pans. I'll divide it up evenly over both pans and then bake them. Okay, my cakes came out of the oven. I have 2 of them, and I'm going to let them cool before I stack them and, of course, frost them. And now that my cake halves have cooled, I'm going to go ahead and make a frosting and frost the cakes. So I'm also using the vanilla frosting recipe that's in Kate Macdonald's Anne of Green Gables cookbook. Some of the reasons I really love Anne from Anne of Green Gables is that she is so relatable. You know, the trials, the difficulties she goes through in life, her faith, to me my faith in the church and just my belief in Jesus, all of that is really important to me, and that is a theme woven throughout the books for Anne, and I really love that. It's not just going through the motions for her. She really does have a faith that is real and alive, and that's something that is big in my life, and so I love to see that. And my favorite character is just, it's a beautiful thing. Anne also has a big heart. She and she has this imagination. I mean, she's just a very, very likable, loving person, and she's inspired me quite a bit in my own life. And even though she's not real, I do think that a lot of us can relate to that sentiment of having a favorite book or book character, and just how it's affected our lives in a positive way. Alright, now that my cake is frosted, I'm going to add some pretty sprinkles on top. I have a feeling that if Anne had sprinkles, she would have loved using them. Look how pretty. The last recipe that I'll be making is raspberry cordial. This is a special raspberry juice, and Anne invites her best friend Diana over for a tea party, and Marilla told her she can use the raspberry cordial that is in the pantry to drink. This recipe is found in Kate Macdonald's recipe book on page 16 of the older version. So first I'm going to cook the raspberries with the sugar. It's going to turn into like a syrup that I will need to strain out. I'm going to be doing about half of the recipe for my family. That will be enough. So this package is just over 300 grams of frozen raspberries, and I'm going to add in just over a half cup of sugar. This will cook for about 20 to 25 minutes. I'm going to mash the raspberries in the pan after they've been simmering for about 25 minutes. And then I'm going to go ahead and strain this to make sure we get all the pulp and seeds out of our cordial. So here I am straining out all of the seeds. That is a beautiful red color. Now I can mix in 4 cups of water that was boiled. It's nice and hot. And then 2 lemons that I'll be squeezing all the juice out of. Once I have this all put together, it will chill in the fridge until we're ready to drink it. So in chapter 16 here on page 123, it says here, Anne looked on the second shelf of the sitting room pantry, but there was no bottle of raspberry cordial there. Search revealed it away back on the top shelf. Anne put it on a tray and set it on the table with a tumbler. Now please help yourself, Diana, she said politely. I don't believe I'll have any just now. I don't feel as if I wanted any after all those apples. Diana poured herself out a tumblerful, looked at its bright red hue admiringly, and then sipped it daintily. That's awfully nice raspberry cordial, Anne, she said. I didn't know raspberry cordial was so nice. I'm real glad you like it. Take as much as you want. I'm going to run out and stir the fire up. Okay, and then a few sentences later it says, when Anne came back from the kitchen, Diana was drinking her second glassful of cordial. And being entreated thereto by Anne, she offered no particular objection to the drinking of a third. The tumblerfuls were generous ones, and the raspberry cordial was certainly very nice. And then further down later in the chapter, we find out that Anne accidentally gave red wine to Diana. And these are 11-year-old girls. They had no idea it was wine. Diana ends up a little drunk. She goes home, and her mother gets very upset. She goes home, dizzy and not feeling so good. So anyways, it becomes this whole event. Anne's not allowed to see Diana for a few weeks because Diana's mom is so upset, and she thinks Anne gave her wine on purpose, which she did not. So, but they do mend their their ability to spend time together, and their friendship continues on always. Alright, I finished cooking our Anne of Green Gables feast, and I'm going to try a little bit of each thing. I'm going to start with the bread. So this is looking really good. The flavor is really good. I just love the smell and taste of freshly baked bread with that yeast. It's just heavenly. I made some green beans to go along with our feast. Now I'm going to try the trout that I grilled. That's really flavorful. Tastes like really good fresh fish. It's tender and it's delicious. Lastly, I'm going to try the liniment cake, which is really just vanilla cake. Let's see how this turned out. It's good, very sweet, definitely very vanilla. If you like vanilla cake, this recipe from Kate Macdonald in her book is perfect. Okay, so this is the last recipe that I need to try that I made today. It's the raspberry cordial. It looks so good. It's a nice deep red, and that's all from the raspberries. It's really good. It has a very strong raspberry flavor, but also a little bit of lemon. It's tart, a little sweet, but if you like raspberry, you'll enjoy this. I hope this inspired you to check out Anne of Green Gables. It is definitely one of the best novel series ever. My challenge for you today is to think about how you may have been inspired or encouraged by one of your favorite books or book characters. Whether real or fiction, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear, and also love to really get new book recommendations. So if there's a book you'd love to share about, please let me know. Share in the description box below or message me. I think it could create really good conversation. Thanks for watching today, and remember to hit like and subscribe.